Good morning and happy solstice. The Northern Hemisphere solstice occurred on Wednesday at 8:58 in the morning. And if you've never been quite sure what solstice means, it is when the sun reaches its northern or southernmost excursions. That's the Tropic of Cancer, that's the Tropic of Capricorn. And the sun is 50-50 at these points at that time of the year. And up here, it's 24 hours of sun. So this occurs twice during the year because the Earth is tipped at 23.5 degrees. And the solstice is the longest day of the year, which right now, or yesterday, was 15 hours and 2 minutes. I bet not one of you knew that. But my wife does because she loves sun. All right. Anyway, this has become the science tidbit. Did you know that many of the famous scientists who established our current scientific paradigms that we stand on and trust and believe in today were closet mystics? Now, I picked this tidbit because of the speaker we have to kind of transition and get your mind relaxed enough to consider the possibilities here a little wider. So why is that important? We often dismiss intuitive knowing in favor of rational thought, but we are increasingly bombarded, with fake news. We can no longer rely upon the previously trusted means for validation, whether that's our pundit of choice or the internet or wherever. There's also been deliberate misinformation, social media manipulation, and artificial intelligence that makes fact-checking even more daunting. Point being here is, are there alternate ways of knowing? And how do you know what to know? Adaptive strategies can include applying critical thinking and seeking alternate ways of knowing. So questions are increasingly being asked about the sources and limits of consciousness, maybe even what consciousness means exactly. So my recent KGNU radio interview was prompted by today's talk and whether intangible cues should even be considered in traditional science. And yet science continues to struggle with the mysteries of dark matter and dark energy, with entanglement, with singularities, precognition, quantum computing, missing antimatter, quantum superposition. I could go on. The SSE was created precisely to provide such a forum and peer-reviewed journal for addressing rigorously such perplexing problems. One surprise to many is that the foundation upon which accepted science now stands was established in part by scientists who themselves considered and valued esoteric means of knowing. So there's no intention for you to read any of that. It's way too complicated. But I'm telling you that there's 18 scientists there that are from previous years who established much of what we accept as being rigorously done through the scientific method. That list includes Planck and Sir James Jeans and Sir Arthur Eddington and Louis de Broglie, Wolfgang Pauli. These are people that we all assumed are, solid scientists. So I'll start with Isaac Newton here. He's well known for the laws of motion, gravity, and the development of calculus, along with Leibniz. But he's less known for the fact that he's devoted 30 years and journaled over 1 million words on alchemy and the philosopher's stone. There's a quote that he gave, "Truth is the offspring of silence and unbroken meditation." It doesn't sound quite scientific, maybe, to the traditional stereotype we might have. Nikola Tesla, next in the time scheme that I've chosen. He's well known for inventing the induction motor, the radio, yes and not Marconi. It was Tesla. And it's been actually changed. Marconi used what Tesla did, but this is not about Tesla. So anyway, he developed the alternating current that became the basis of today's electrical grid that powers everything. Yet it's not as well known that he believed that the Great Pyramids of Egypt were giant transmitters of energy and the basis of his Wardenclyffe studies. Here's a quote that kind of gives you an idea that he thought more openly. "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all previous centuries of existence." The Northern Hemisphere solstice occurred on Wednesday at 8:58 in the morning. And if you've never been quite sure what solstice means, it is when the sun reaches its northern or southernmost excursions. That's the Tropic of Cancer, that's the Tropic of Capricorn. And the sun is 50-50 at these points at that time of the year. And up here, it's 24 hours of sun. So this occurs twice during the year because the Earth is tipped at 23.5 degrees. And the solstice is the longest day of the year, which right now, or yesterday, was 15 hours and 2 minutes. I bet not one of you knew that. But my wife does because she loves sun. All right. Anyway, this has become the science tidbit. Did you know that many of the famous scientists who established our current scientific paradigms that we stand on and trust and believe in today were closet mystics? Now, I picked this tidbit because of the speaker we have to kind of transition and get your mind relaxed enough to consider the possibilities here a little wider. So why is that important? We often dismiss intuitive knowing in favor of rational thought, but we are increasingly bombarded, with fake news. We can no longer rely upon the previously trusted means for validation, whether that's our pundit of choice or the internet or wherever. There's also been deliberate misinformation, social media manipulation, and artificial intelligence that makes fact-checking even more daunting. Point being here is, are there alternate ways of knowing? And how do you know what to know? Adaptive strategies can include applying critical thinking and seeking alternate ways of knowing. So questions are increasingly being asked about the sources and limits of consciousness, maybe even what consciousness means exactly. So my recent KGNU radio interview was prompted by today's talk and whether intangible cues should even be considered in traditional science. And yet science continues to struggle with the mysteries of dark matter and dark energy, with entanglement, with singularities, precognition, quantum computing, missing antimatter, quantum superposition. I could go on. The SSE was created precisely to provide such a forum and peer-reviewed journal for addressing rigorously such perplexing problems. One surprise to many is that the foundation upon which accepted science now stands was established in part by scientists who themselves considered and valued esoteric means of knowing. So there's no intention for you to read any of that. It's way too complicated. But I'm telling you that there's 18 scientists there that are from previous years who established much of what we accept as being rigorously done through the scientific method. That list includes Planck and Sir James Jeans and Sir Arthur Eddington and Louis de Broglie, Wolfgang Pauli. These are people that we all assumed are, solid scientists. So I'll start with Isaac Newton here. He's well known for the laws of motion, gravity, and the development of calculus, along with Leibniz. But he's less known for the fact that he's devoted 30 years and journaled over 1 million words on alchemy and the philosopher's stone. There's a quote that he gave, "Truth is the offspring of silence and unbroken meditation." It doesn't sound quite scientific, maybe, to the traditional stereotype we might have. Nikola Tesla, next in the time scheme that I've chosen. He's well known for inventing the induction motor, the radio. Yes, and not Marconi. It was Tesla, and it's been actually changed. Marconi used what Tesla did, but this is not about Tesla. So anyway, he developed the alternating current that became the basis of today's electrical grid that powers everything. Yet it's not as well known that he believed that the Great Pyramids of Egypt were giant transmitters of energy and the basis of his Wardenclyffe studies. Here's a quote that kind of gives you an idea that he thought more openly. "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all previous centuries of existence." Okay, Max Planck, father of quantum physics. well known for that, got the 1918 Nobel Prize, discovered energy quanta. It's less known that he believed that the character of this world order can never be directly known, but only indirectly recognized or suspected. And one of his quotes that I like is that I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Friendly audience here, I think. Albert Einstein, even him. His well-known accomplishment, most prominent physicist of the 20th century, he got the 1921 Nobel Prize. And I picked Nobel Prize winners here because that has a certain gravitas, but, well, Tesla did not have one. And he was going to get one, but he had one. He was Edison. There was talk about he sharing one with Edison, and he's too proud to do that, I think. So anyway, we're back to Einstein here. So he's well known for relativity, of course. But he also considered that the sliding of Earth's entire crust might account for anomalies that you see in the geologic record. The whole thing. I mean, he was quite open-minded. And one of the quotes he had is that there's no place in this kind of quantum physics for both field and matter. For the field is the only reality. How's that for a setup for you? Huh? Okay. Erwin Schrödinger, I got a couple more here. He might not be known to everybody here, but he is to me. And he got the 1933 Nobel Prize in Physics for developments of quantum theory, and maybe most of us would know about Schrödinger's cat. Anyway, he's less known for the fact that he was a student of Vedantic mystical philosophies of ancient India. And the quote I found that I liked on him is, the total number of minds in the universe is one. So wrap your head around that. And last one here I have is Werner Heisenberg, well known for the Nobel Prize of 1932 for quantum mechanical theory and his famous uncertainty principle. But he's less known for the fact he was a respected philosopher who wrote his book on physics and philosophy and the revolution of modern science, and had regular arguments with Immanuel Kant about what's real. Here's the quote for him after the conversations about Indian philosophy. Some of the ideas of quantum physics that he had seen so crazy before suddenly are starting to make sense. Aren't those kind of fun? All right, so what vantage point are we perceiving reality? It's generally accepted that our left brains analytically perceive and our right brains are more intuitive in nature. But do we perceive with the brain or the mind? And are these even the same? There is emerging evidence that our brains are for controlling our bodies, but it is the mind that does all the work, does the evaluation, and directs our body responses. If the brain's perceptions are limited to the five senses within time and space, might this field, mind field, not mind field, mind field, might that be the non-physical in nature with access beyond those sensory limitations of space and time? Is there another realm of knowledge, information that you can use to inform what you're doing and what you know? If that's indeed true, might scientists then have access to a powerful intuitive skills that most do not technically accept, much less develop or exercise? So today's presenter is Angie and LaRue, who will be speaking on the non-locality of consciousness. We are in for a treat, being offered the window to a wider reality if we can stretch beyond generally accepted beliefs and listen from the deepest wellspring of our being. In contrast to recent presentations by Dr. Lamb here on AI and Dr. Grunsfeld on the Hubble telescope, today's presentation will be a little more experiential and perhaps challenging. The KGNU radio host, Shelley Schlender, was she here? You missed the best part of my introduction. Anyway, this is the lady that called me the day before I had to fly out, and my wife made me do it. Anyway, she's here to witness our process as we consider whether probing such imponderables may be a diversion of true science, or perhaps a door to the breakthroughs we so earnestly seek. So, with that, you'll need this, but not yet.
I was going to switch over when you're ready.
I'm not ready. I'm up the floor, man, it's a powerful feeling. So, introducing Angelia LaRue is a bit challenging due to the great breadth and depth of her skills and activities. She is the founder of the Inner Passage Mystery School. She's a Reiki master, a spiritual coach, a reverend of the Church of Inner Light, a medical intuitive, manufacturer of orgone generators, a certified master Christologist, and the list just goes on. I've known Angie for nearly a decade, and she was poised to present her PSI results with Kevin Ganapathy of the University of Colorado 3 years ago when the SSE local meetings were put on hold due to COVID. She has an international reputation and almost daily teaches students from Lithuania and South Africa to Luxembourg and Singapore. She has her own YouTube channel with over 40 videos. Angie's been interviewed on at least 30 shows, including Mason Works with Kathy Mason, who's in our audience here today. Angie even created a show with the innovative title, Next Month's News Now. As Kathy Mason's announcement noted, Angie's goal is to introduce that consciousness can indeed move, observe, and sometimes even interact with the chosen destination. She is eminently qualified following a Kundalini awakening that resulted in an explosion of psychic abilities, awareness of subtle energy, ability to communicate beyond the veil, and more. Having the ability to remotely view, Angie's been hired to locate ancient artifacts, helped police to find missing persons, and has taken people on more than 400 out-of-body trips. These are times of explosive change as boundaries blur between disciplines. Consider that the different terminologies used by scientists and mystics may be describing a similar reality from contrasting perspectives. In Angie's own words, most serious scientists with deep inquiry end up in the rabbit hole along with me, but using different languaging. Whatever is going on out there is far more than our rational minds can explore, and we need new tools to dig into the rest of reality. Angie will be monitoring our comfort levels so that her deep dive does not push us into what she calls cognitive dissonance. It is best that we relax our minds and don't try to figure out what we're receiving as we receive it. Allow what can sink in from the position you're in now and enjoy the ride. Now, please help me welcoming the Reverend Angelia LaRue.
I'd really like to thank Shirley for getting the Society for Scientific Exploration going again. I missed it. I missed all of you. I missed these important inquiries that we're doing. Thank you so much.
I missed it too.
Paul, thank you for that beautiful introduction. You're amazing. And to all the volunteers here who have helped, thank you, thank you. Kathy Mason, there you are. Thank you for the encouragement to actually do this. This is my first talk ever, publicly. Mr. Gar, for everything you do, thank you. Thank you.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom. Commencing countdown, engines on.
Thank you for bringing your curiosity.
Check ignition and may God's
Your
love
open
be
minds.
with you.
Your open hearts. Your inquiry. It's really great to be here with you. In an ironic twist, I beat William Shatner to space. He just went this year. I started 10 years ago. Belmore, I have 3 eyes. 2 to look and 1 to see. All right, this is interesting. I actually painted this painting. I was a professional gallery artist for 20 years of my life. And when I moved to Hawaii, which was where I had the awakening of consciousness, I started painting a bunch of really unusual pictures. And I would get done with the picture and I would step back and I couldn't even believe it came out of me. It's like it had fallen out from someplace deep inside me that I didn't know about. This is one of them. This painting's called Leap, and it's actually owned by a guy who's a nuclear scientist. He worked for the Pentagon. He was the top one there for a while. And he bought this. I never knew what this meant until I started traveling out of body. This is a wormhole. All right, so a little overview. We're going to talk about what is out-of-body travel. We're going to look at the pilot projects and the experiments that were done, things that were learned from a psychic's point of view on the field of everythingness, and a little bit of recreational OBE meaning out-of-body experience, jumps that I did, and a Q&A. All right, so aspects of awareness. Paul went into this a little bit. We have the ego, the mind. This is the personality. This is the person that we think we are, right? When you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror and you say, I am so-and-so, and that comes with a whole string of identities, all right? You also have an inner self. This is a childlike, innocent being, which is always able to rise up and engage with play if our mind doesn't suppress it, right? So when you play with your grandchildren, you rediscover that inner self, right? You forget for a moment all those labels and titles that say you have to live and walk and behave and think and act in a certain way, and you become love again. Right? Subconscious self, this stores everything. It's like a pack rat. It's really not discerning. So we have to go in and clean it out sometimes. Higher self, eternal self. This is the self that comes back time after time into these vehicles. This is the vehicle of Angie. That's the vehicle of Paul, Marianne. We all have these. And we've had a lot of them. We've had a lot of different bodies. This higher self right here, this is the aspect that can do things the mind and the personality can't do. We'll talk more about that. And then we have the gateway self, the witness or the observer self. And if you look at any of the great time-honored religions of the world, they're going to use these words somewhere or words similar. Witness, observer state, or awareness itself. It's non-judging. It has no opinions. It simply sees what is and reports it. All right, so let's talk about the vehicle that we use for out-of-body travel. There's a number of different forms of travel. I'll start down here. The ones I'm going to talk about today, to keep this brief, I'll just start with astral, because probably everybody here has astral traveled in their dreams at some point. If you have, give a show of hands. Yeah, so you guys are familiar. I love astral travel. You actually get to see your own body. It's really interesting. The problem for me with astral travel is I can't make it happen. It's going to happen when it happens or not happen when it happens, and I don't have any control of it. So I prefer etheric travel. Etheric travel is a field of energy that's around us, which is us as well. We're not just the body, we're all these biomorphic fields. One of those fields is basically an etheric field, and that field is like a little ship that awareness can travel in, and it carries its own fuel with it. The great thing about etheric travel is you can stay out of body for up to 40, I have trained myself to stay out of body for up to 40 minutes. After that, I kind of seem to run out of fuel. There may be people in some of the great traditions, you know, Tibetan Buddhism and other Hindi traditions that have trained longer than 40 minutes, but that seems to be my cap. But I can use multiple clairs. The more I can fuel up, the more clairs I can use. The more clairs I get, the more bits of information I get from the site.
Define clair.
Clara, the different, Clara Audio, Clara Visual, Clara, all are 5 senses, but a higher version of those by far. So the more feel I have, the more of those I can run. I was going to make a computer analogy of how many bits of data, but I think you guys get the idea. All right, so we're going to talk about the fuel tank. We need the fuel tank. So what is the fuel? The fuel in this case, there's, we'll just say 3 primary major forms of energy at this level that we're going to talk about. One of them is the energy that our body gets. Feeds our biomorphic field. This has magnetic and this and that. There's a lot of different energies in it. Our body really uses this a lot. As we connect to our higher self, to our higher consciousness, that fuel that it takes comes from Source Creator. It's the, we had a speaker here at SSE one time I really liked a lot, and she talked about space being this electric field. And I can relate to it. It's not the perfect word, but it's something like that. And it's the energy that we can gather, we can collect, and we can feel our consciousness. Oh, wow, this is exciting. Okay. So that's the one we're going to use for out-of-body travel, that fuel level. Now, we do need just a little bit of grounding those so that we can come back into our body with a certain amount of grace and ease. All right, so when we travel out of body using the etheric layer as the vehicle, we're a big glowing ball, right? And depending what the predominant frequencies are of your consciousness, like for example, if you're a very peaceful person, you're going to be in blues, light blue to dark blue. If you're a very spiritual person, a lot of goals may start coming in. If you're a psychic mystic like me, you're going to be in the violet range. If you're very enthusiastic and cheerful like Mr. Gar, you're going to be in the yellow and the orange ranges. If you're young and youthful and full of health and vibrant, probably the orange ranges. If you're a natural healer, whether you know it or don't know it, you're going to be in greens. So that's how we recognize each other when we're out of body. Now, I've covered up the names, and you're going to see that on all the slides. Some of these people are SSE members, just so you know. Okay. And that's what we look at. So when we jump out of body, we travel above the layer where the satellites are, and then we wait and we gather and make sure everybody's there before I open the second wormhole, and we continue on. So these first-hand reports, saying, oh yes, so-and-so was there, and so-and-so, and so-and-so, and so-and-so. All right. This was caught on camera. This is in Abidjan, Brazil. There was a mother there. She lost her whole family in a car wreck, and she was really trying to process all of that grief, and she had done a lot of praying, asking for the family to come in and let her know if she was okay. And she went on this walk, and she was compelled to just be talking with them in her heart or in her mind. And a friend who had gone with her took a photograph, and following her was these. So this is a pretty good example of what we look like when we're traveling out of body. And here, digital cameras are amazing. They can capture things we normally don't get to see with these eyes. We have to look with this eye. All right. So it is pure consciousness. It's traveling out of body. It's traveling out of body in a field which has been fueled, which is going to determine how long we get to go for and which clairs we get to use. And also we do need to have the clairs actually working. And that's time and training. Some of us have them naturally. Otherwise it can be trained, just like learning to ride a bike. All right, so real quick on the method. The first thing after we fuel it, we're going to seal our auric field. Actually, we can seal it and then fuel it. Set the target location. You can't just jump out of body with no location, and you'll get really interesting results. It's pretty fun, actually. But you can set it. All right, so let's say I want to go back to, I don't know, when the pyramids were being built. I'm going to set that as my intention. I'll use the Taj Mahal. I went to India right after lockdown, and that's exactly what I did. And I had a government-appointed tour guide, whether I wanted it or not. He wouldn't let me be. And I didn't really want to look at the Taj Mahal. I wanted to look at everything surrounding the Taj Mahal. And so the grounds are very big, and I would go and sit in different places and jump back to the time when the Taj Mahal was being built, what was happening in that location, and I'd also look at the Taj Mahal. And there's a particular mudra I use, this one. I don't know why it works for me so well, but I can jump in seconds with this mudra. Otherwise it takes me about 30 seconds to a minute, 2 minutes to make a wormhole. Or I can do this mudra and I can jump in seconds. And so I'm sitting there doing this mudra, and somebody starts talking very loudly to me, and I don't understand what they're saying. I'm trying to time jump here. And I finally crack my eyes open because the voice won't stop, and there's a gun, right? And I look up and I see a uniform. There's this military guy. I had no idea what he was saying to me. Well, the government guy comes over and informs me, Taj Mahal is not a religious site, it's a mausoleum, and because of the different interests there, you are not allowed to pray. Well, I wasn't going to try to explain to him, I was actually time jumping. But apparently doing the mudra made them think I was praying. So I took a few seconds extra and stopped doing the mudra. He got interested, the government guy got interested, he started asking me what I was doing, and I just didn't really want to talk about it, but I did it. I just told him this is what I see when I close my eyes, when I set this particular intention. And I continued to go around, and every time I was like, what do you see? What do you see? What do you see? And I kept telling him, and finally, after about the sixth side, it's a big, huge area. I'm going to all these different places, and I'm telling him, you know, this is where the water boys were doing this, and they had all these leaves laid out, and they were straining water through these certain types of leaves. And his mouth just kept dropping more and more and more, and I'm like, there's big wheels of stones over here, and they're polishing smaller stones on them, and over here is these big piles of hay, and then when they take those stones from there, these in this section they're carving them, and then they put them on these carts that are pulled by people, loaded up with hay, and they pull them down to the Taj Mahal. And then I was describing all the builders inside, and all the yelling. It was built by Arabs, and they were brilliant mathematicians, and you can see that all over the Taj Mahal, just brilliant. And they're very enthusiastically yelling. The inside of the Taj Mahal was so loud. I'll jump to the end. At the end, he told me that I had reported things that they know about the Taj Mahal that they have never printed in any books, and they've never told anybody. And then he asked me to do a reading. All right, so we're going to the extent that we can, we're going to match to the target frequency. And then awareness then travels via wormhole, which is opened by gathering energy, psychic abilities. Awareness reports to the mind. Okay, so there's a chain here. Awareness jumps, awareness reports back to the mind. So you can talk using your mouth when you're on an out-of-body travel. And it's really neat because a whole group of people can go and be talking to each other. And we can all go left. Ooh, what's that shiny thing? Let's go look at that. Right? All right, and the mind reports to the data collector. In this case, it was Kavan. All right, contaminations, things that can happen when we travel out of body. For the most part, it's really, really safe. Occasionally there are some things that can happen. I was hired to jump back to when the temples of Hathor were operational, and then to the mystery schools where they trained the priestesses. And at that time, all the lilies on the Nile were blooming, and there was a temple right there that served a lot of the river traveling people, which was a main highway really at that time. And they had incense burning all the time. Anyway, I won't tell you that whole story, but when I returned to my body smelled like the lilies and the temple incense. It was incredible. It lasted for until I woke up the next morning, and then the smell was gone. So enough of my particles were actually back in Egypt during the rise of the Hathor temple system, enough to come back smelling like it. So, yeah, and it's also called bilocation. All right, radiation poisoning, yeah, that can happen. if you want to go hang out on a satellite, be wise. There's a lot of stuff up there that leaks. Probably don't need to talk more about that, but you can get burned pretty bad, really sick. Took a group of people one time to the dark side of the moon, which is really super inhabited. It's like Antarctica. A lot of different species there. They all have labs, and they all have nurseries, greenhouses where they're growing things. And there was one section of the greenhouse that they were growing marijuana. And when you're traveling in an ether state, an etheric state, you kind of absorb everything. One person went over there, got really high, and traveled through the whole group. And that trip turned into herding cats, let me tell you. So, yeah, this field of effect and stuff can really affect you. We did the same thing, though, in a different greenhouse. We went in their nutrition vats and just hung out inside these nutrition vats. Major health charge. It was absolutely incredible. We just radiated vibrant health for like 4 days after that. So it can work both ways. Don't know why I returned from a trip. One time I was glowing. Everybody saw it, witnessed it. Still don't know what happened, but as a side effect, you can get traumatized.
Yeah.
If you set your frequency high enough, that's probably not going to happen, but if you go into the fourth dimension, there's a lot of bad guys there. It's only marginally better than the third dimension, so you can run into thugs and gangsters, and they can beat you up. And then when you come back to body, you'll have bruises, scratches, and scrapes as that information from the etheric field comes down into the physical. Pretty rare though, but it happens. ET beam captures, I don't know how they've done that, but they figured out a way to do a tractor beam to catch etheric bodies. I got caught one time along with somebody else. We were able to will ourselves back in the bodies, into our bodies within 5 or 6, maybe 10 seconds. But it was a little disturbing. So there's a few things, it's not a big scary thing. Bilocations and site integration, this is where you're kind of as much there as you are here, and that's where you come back smelling like things and stuff like that. So there's very powerful levels, and eventually, I don't know if I'm going too far, but if you can ace bilocation and site integration, guess what the next step is?
Transportation.
Teleportation. Yeah. Yeah. All right, types of wormholes. All right, this is yeah. Okay, this is a psychically made one. Well, this is not. This is a rendition, but they look a lot like this. Okay. This is another version when you're in higher states of consciousness. You start getting a lot of colors and a lot of intricacies. There's a lot of different versions of this, but I won't go into that. This is very realistically what it looks like to travel through a wormhole. Unbelievably realistic. They get a little bit thinner where you can see more stars and you can see planets through it. But it's always this crazy tube, and you're so focused on trying to navigate it like a little race car going through it. Here's another version. All right, this is a natural wormhole. These exist out there in space. And in fact, one time we popped out of a personal made wormhole at a nebula and weren't quite sure where to go because this was not where we were heading. Saw a natural wormhole that looked a lot like this. Went inside of it and there was a ship in it. And we passed the ship, we came out the other side, and there was this planet, this amazing purple planet covered with all kinds of stones. And we were like, this is where we are heading. And as we were deciding where on that planet to land, a spaceship shot out of the wormhole. So that taught me something really interesting. When we travel wormholes, we're traveling at the speed of consciousness. It's way beyond the speed of light. We passed this spaceship, got to talk for a little while before it caught up and came out. Man-made wormholes. This is energetically what it looks like going in. This particular one, I'm not going to go into too much depth about. where this is from. But it's large enough to drive a golf cart in it, and people are so acclimatized to walking through this. They're like looking at their cell phones and their iPads and stuff. They're walking through a teleporter, and they don't even notice it. Like, it's amazing to me. All right, here's another one down here. And then this is just showing the energetic pattern of that. These are man-made. Here's another one. We found this one on another world. It's very common when you see them working. They're angular. The man-made ones are. They're not round like the psychic and the naturally occurring ones. Here's another one. Up here, and this is like a whole set of triangles strung together. All right, how did private exploration lead to pilot studies? All right, so Kavan is going to lead the next section in his talk. This is a random number generator. This is how we met. There was a call at CU for people who could influence a random number generator, either up or down, but not on the straight line, the medium. You had to move it. And that's how we met, and I will let him. Let's see if we can.
Just use your finger.
Greetings everyone, this is Kavan Ganapati. I'm a parapsychology researcher. Today I'm going to be speaking about Buying the Future, a pilot study on the prediction of non-historical data of lottery numbers using 3 creative approaches that I performed along with Angela LaRue. And with that, I'd like to give you an overview of how I started working with Angie. Angie had some very good results in affecting the randomness of what is known as the TRNG experiments, which is a spin-off of the Global Consciousness Project. As you can see, this is the baseline, the 0 baseline, and Angie, using her intentions, has a non-random deviation of the randomness, which is produced here. And with that, I realized that we both can come along and work on predicting the non-historical data of such random system, and this is what led to the entire 4-month-long study.
Oh, it's my turn again.
Greetings everyone, this is Kavan Ganapati. I'm a parapsychology researcher. Today I'm going to be...
Okay, here we go. All right, so what they did is they had kind of 10 different experiments that they wanted me to do it their way, and then the next 10 I got to do it my way. So what we're seeing here is theirs. This is based on theirs, their meditation techniques and stuff, and then I got to do it my way. And so I jumped out of body. Yes?
Can you explain the reg a little bit? People don't know what a random event generator is,
Random number generator.
or show how the
All right.
excursion away from the mean, what that means.
Okay. So it's sending out 0 to 9 in a random order, and that random fluctuation is really going to fluctuate across this middle bar right here until it's influenced. This is the curve that they were kind of hoping, and it goes down below as well. I chose to influence it upwards, so that they're hoping I'll be able to influence inside of that. And as you can see over here, I went way outside of their expected everything. So basically what I'm meditating and inviting the random number generator to produce anything above 5. All right? And there was a few different techniques for doing that. And then I energetically kind of crashed out because I was using willpower. Okay. I know better, I'm a mystic. So when it came my turn to do invent experiments the way I wanted to raise the numbers up, I charged up with energy, I fueled, right? So that I could use that energy. And then I started jumping out of body and I started interacting with the random number generator. What's really interesting is the greatest results of the experiments that I ran I used love, right? I jumped into the random number generator onto the little circuit board, and I told, the random number generator all the numbers it was producing, that we loved each other, and our expression of love was 9. 9. Our thoughts create reality. And Kavan and I, of course, were like, oh, by Jove, we're onto something. Let's play with this more. All right, so initially he wanted me to kind of remote view it and stuff, and I was like, there's a better way. Yeah. Can I do it my way? And he's like, yeah. He's like, well, what do you need? And I was like, well, I need a safe place to jump from. So what is a safe place to jump from? I need a controllable environment with minimal electromagnetic pollution. No interruptions, obviously. It needs to be frequency protected. That means a very high frequency. So there can't be low interruptive things. There can't be two people who had a fight the day before in that space and have left all this emotional yuckiness there. No, no low things. It all needs to be high frequencies. Temple air is best. The energy of a temple. That's well tended by somebody who knows what they're doing. All right, and I need extra energy to reduce fueling time, and I happen to have an orgone generator crystal biobed, which produces it 24 hours a day. And it needs to be a stable field, and that's a whole other set of things I won't go into. So this is it. This was my jump point. I jumped from on top of this. So I was in a completely protected field. That's the inside of it that you're seeing there. This is the orgone generator crystal biobed. Right, Kavan's turn to talk. So now we've got it set up, we know where we're jumping to, now we got to, now we got to decide where we're jumping to.
On study. And to give you a quick overview of the kind of protocols and the method that we use, we primarily focus on what's known as the Powerball and Manganese jackpot, where we essentially needed 5 random numbers within a range of 1 to 70 and one number between 1 to 26. And Angie used what is known as an out-of-body or remote viewing states to achieve this. And the whole concept here was to essentially to increase the accuracy and the prediction feasibility of the non-historical data in such OB or remote viewing states. We used 3 creative approaches, which I will be describing them in detail later. And we calculated what is known as the Pearson's correlation coefficient in order to compare the similarities of the number sets between what was actually predicted by Angie and the actual result in order to calculate the p-significance value. And all this was done at the comfort of Angie's workspace. And later I would give her feedback from my apartment wall. And we had roughly around 30 sessions, where each session would last for about an hour with a duration of 4 months, starting from Jan to the end of April. On study. And to give you a quick overview of the kind.
All right. So we'll talk about the jumps. The initial jump was to Florida, to where the lottery balls are rolling down a little machine. And I kept getting the right building and the wrong date. I kept getting lottery results from like 3 months before. So I was having a problem landing the right time and space. All right. So date and time of live events. So right lottery, wrong month. I managed to solve that. I thought I was so clever. I managed to solve that by using live street cams, right? Then I could anchor the exact feeling of the day, the exact amount of magnetics the sun had put out, exact Schumann frequency and all of that. That did land me on the right time. But then I ran into this other problem. Numbers and money both are ideas. They're not tangible objects, they're concepts. So that gets really sticky. Also, there's a lot of sticky energy around money, right? Like there's a lot of stress and desire and want, and it's just like money is psychologically loaded. And so when people are wanting their lottery numbers to come in, there's a huge psychic and emotional and mental load that's added. If I do a pilot study again, I won't use the lottery. All right, Another problem, I'm dyslexic. I'm dyslexic. Yeah, this is hard. Yes, this was amazing. I also discovered I'm not the only one who can jump out of body to the lottery. There was other jumpers there. There was this one woman who, her psychic vision of herself, so then therefore that's kind of how she presents in the mist, was this big black woman, right? And she's good. She's really good. And she sensed me there. And we ended up in a wrestling match. Because I'm trying to push her out of the way or get through her so I can watch the balls coming down and she's pushing in on top of me. And then there's this problem with spheres with numbers. This is really hard to see when you're out of body. The number's at an angle and this and that. So after I don't know how many jumps, 10, 12 jumps, I was like, wait, I gotta change methods. Wait, this isn't working. All right, so this is what the numbers can look like when you're out of body. So that number up there could be a 3 or a 9, that can be a 1 or a 7, that can be a 5 or a 2, a 4 or a 9, a 6 or a 2, a 9 or a 2. Yeah, it's hard to get the clarity, especially when there's any kind of interference, like a wrestling match. All right, yeah, we've got Pon's turn again.
And with that, I'd like to move on to the first method, what is known as the anchor method, where I would predetermine a certain symbol, which Angie would later specifically describe in her OBE states. And with that, we would lock on to a specific timeline in the future. And that is where we use this particular methodology called as the anchor method, where it is essentially a symbol of choice which is used to avoid time displacement effects in the process of viewing numbers. And with that, I'd like to bring attention to the kind of results that we obtain. So as you can see on the right, we have the graph showing the p-value significance along the y-axis, and you have the number of combinations along the x-axis. And the black mark here is the significance line, which is essentially showing a p-value significance well below 0.05 units. And with a number of 126 combinations, which was spanned out of 12 different sessions in a span of 2 months, we got 76 significant combinations with an overall p-value of 0.071, which is slightly above the overall significance, but if you essentially focus on the highest p-value in the entire setup, we got the best result on the anchor method on February 26, 2020, where the prediction was 08, 12, 13, 27, 60, and 08, whereas the actual result was 08, 27, 29, 36, 47, 24. We actually got 08 and 27 very accurately, and as you can see, this was the ticket that we bought on that particular day, with an overall p-value of 0.00092. And with that, I'd like to move.
All right. So location 1 wasn't working that well for us, but it did show there was a lot of hope here. We just need to start nuancing things. So a lot of this entire pilot experiment was learning how to get it right, which I think is how science works, actually. You find the path to what you need through all the failures and retrying and resculpting. And one other thing I wanted to point out, remote viewing is not the same as out-of-body travel. I did use a remote viewing target, as you saw, that he showed on the top with the yin-yang, and I would project my thoughts to where my wormhole was going to go, and I would describe that target. If I had the right target, he would say, yes, we have a go. I'd open a wormhole and do the jump. And if he said, no, you got the wrong one, then I would have to start over and find the right time thread to get there. All right, so we changed. We changed jump locations and methods. This is in northern Boulder. Where we're going on campus now.
I'd like to bring attention to the next methodology called as the liquid nitrogen, the dry ice elimination method. This was primarily influenced and inspired by Ed May's entropy bomb work, where he used dry ice in order to eliminate precognitive remote viewing results. So a very interesting spin-off was that I used aluminum paste filled with sand in it and essentially draw the numbers along the sand and pour liquid nitrogen during the time of feedback, which would, the whole idea was to essentially pick up the psychic here, Angie, would essentially pick up on these entropy effects along these roots of the numbers. And with that, I'd like to bring attention to the results we obtained of the total 13 combinations. We got 12 significant combos with an overall p-value of 0.021. And with that, I'd also like to emphasize that we need more trials and further experimentation to understand the entire methodology more accurately. But if you essentially bring attention to the best result that we got on March 18, 2020, as you can see the ticket on the right side, we have a prediction of 0, 9, 19, 45, 58, 69, and 15, whereas the actual result was 1, 5, which was essentially our Powerball number. And then we have 27, and then we have 44, which is very close to 45, 59, which was essentially a 58 in the prediction, 63 comes close to 69, and then we have 08, with the p-value of 0.00126. And with that, I'd like to bring it in.
All right, so let me explain what we're doing, because this starts getting a lot more complicated. So what we had to do is, we would meet at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or I think it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I would jump to 6 p.m. No, actually I would jump till 9 p.m. when Kavan has watched the Powerball at 6 p.m. and drawn it into the trays, which he fills with the liquid nitrogen. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm jumping before the event happens till after the event happens, is what I'm doing. All right, so new method, sand trays using liquid nitrogen to increase the entropy. We're using the RV target to anchor the correct timeline. And I'm jumping to 5 hours after the lottery, 5 or 6 hours after. All right, so issues.
What's RV mean?
Remote viewing, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So 2 techniques. I'm doing remote viewing and then I'm doing out-of-body travel or jumping. I call it jumping if I'm changing timelines. If I'm staying in the same timeline, I call it OBE. All right, issues. I got stuck in a fissure. We're going to talk about that in a second. Extreme cost in fuel to get out of this fissure every time. Cost of psychic energy of this was very high, affecting the overall length of the trial. And the fissure healed too slowly. We gave it 2 weeks. That's why there's 13 trials. You have a question?
Can you describe the technique of remote viewing you're using?
Standard.
What's that mean?
He-
Controlled remote viewing, extended remote viewing, associative remote viewing?
It's more of a psychic version of remote viewing. We're going in after specific information. I'm only looking to see the symbol. I'm not going to report the environment it's in and the smells in the air and the sounds in the room and all of that. I'm going for a symbol to make sure I've got the right symbol. So it's quick and dirty remote viewing. Like that? All right. So in this first location we chose, this is our sand trays with the entropy. This is kind of how it looks with the liquid nitrogen raising up, out of which I've got to determine what those numbers are, okay? Problem is there was a device on some shelves that were right here that created this huge glowing area and it created a rift. There was a tear right above the sand trays. And I kept getting sucked into it. Now remember, I'm just etheric energy, right? So it's not going to take much to affect me. And I kept getting sucked into a rift. And it didn't go anywhere. It was just a tear in the local space-time fabric caused by some machinery sitting here. So we only did 13 jumps to this location because this rift wouldn't heal. And I was expending a huge amount of psychic energy fighting out my way back out. So I get sucked in as I'm trying to read a number. I have to fight my way back out, get the next number. I get sucked in again. I have to fight my way out, read the next number. It wasn't worth it. It was like dust. I could never get rid of it. All right, but this was pretty good. Even for all the efforting that was involved, the results were pretty good. A few points here that were way off. So this place was too chaotic with unpredictable energies. I needed a stable field. Chose to change landing zones again. The overall p-value of the experiment was much higher than the Florida stuff. We're starting to hone in on something now. And come on, stay.
Bring attention to our next method, where we called it what is known as an intention ink or the psychic ink methodology, where, as you can see on the right side, you have a liquid which is imbued with intention. This was primarily influenced by the work of William Tiller, where he came up with what is known as an intentioned host devices, where Angie came up with what's known as a similar concept called as the intention water mixture to eliminate the feedback of the numbers, which is distance in space-time. And with that, if you essentially look at the 73 combinations that we got 60 significant combos, and adding to the overall p-value of 0.033, which is well below the significance value, showing a very good side effect. And if you essentially go on to look at the best result on 24th of April 2020, the prediction was 0 to 17, 23, 56, 64, and 14, whereas the actual result was 13, 15, 24, which is very close to 23, 67, which is very good lookalike of 64, 70, and then we have 17, which was our initial prediction as well. And with that, we have one of the best p-values in the entire experiment of 0.00052. Bring attention to our next method, where we
Don't talk. Okay. All right. So these are our numbers right here. Notice how hard those are to see, because they're painted on with the psychic ink. This is some stuff that I made. I put a whole bunch of frequencies in it, like the frequencies over there on the table, using a number of different methods. You'd take a paintbrush and wipe it on. With these two eyes, that's not even discernible, right? But it got our highest p-values. This is where we did the best. This is our best work right here. This is worth doing a lot more. The problem is I used up over time, over the 4 months, so much psychic energy, and that rift was a big part of that, that I was starting to need a break, and I actually quit time jumping for
Months.
now, it was 3 years.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I got pretty tired. All right. So after that, we are changing locations as well, because the rift didn't work, and we're jumping to actually Kavan's bedroom. He's a meditator. He does a lot of praying and whatnot, and so the energies are pretty stable there. So that's what we chose, along with the psychic ink. Same thing, jumping 5 to 6 hours into the future. Same RV protocol to look at the particular symbol to make sure I have the right symbol. So I get in to his room, and the first thing I run into is this big Hindi demigod dude blocking the doorway. And I'm like, I'm invited to be here. Do you mind if I enter? And so anyway, we kind of worked things out. He let me enter, and then after that, I never saw him again. I was able to describe, sorry, Kavan, his messy dresser. He had a desk with a bowl of crystals on his desk and a few other items. Boom, we had our feedback. I was in the right place. I've never been to his room before, except not a body. Okay. And here we go. We just take so these bottom ones were way off the mark, the rest are real good. So this was very good. Out of 73 possible combinations, 60 of them were very significant, 13 only were below significance.
This, gave me a lot of motivation and hope in order to further look at the effects of such things. So if you were to speak about how the entire experiment influenced my own research, it It essentially gave me a solid structure to observe patterns between consciousness and random systems. And with that, this also further gave me a strong motivation to study such effects on different conditions of the mind and other variables within the environment. As you can see, the probability of winning the lottery is 1 in 300 million, whereas here with these creative protocols, we somehow reduced it to 1 in a million, which is essentially a huge step in realizing the power of the mind, especially the power of our own focused mind in such unpredictable and random systems. And I apply this on a regular basis in my own life, using meditation and remote viewing practices. And it further gave me motivation to study and improve my own remote viewing skills for further applications, and most importantly, in my own spiritual journey. And with that, I thank you one and all for your time, attention, and space. Thank you.
So, Kavan was so excited about what we did, what we proved in this case, that he's now doing this. He's teaching himself how to remote view, and he's still doing the lottery. The numbers are, the energy's too sticky for me. There's so many other things I would rather do. So let's take a look at what I normally do.
Yes.
All right, joyriding in the universe. So this is a view I've seen many times. It's the rings of Saturn from the inside of the atmosphere. There's a place that I take the students in the school to. I can't even tell you how many times I've been to this planet. Really interesting. This photograph came out recently. It was said to be Cassini. I later learned it's an artist's rendition of what Cassini saw. But this is a good example of what it looks like. I've seen a very similar view many, many, many times. All right, here's another way that is useful besides joyriding in the universe. This is a man who went missing. He was an emergency medical technician out of Durango. And the family called me from back east at about 11 o'clock at night. Told me he was missing, a storm was coming in. They didn't think he would live through the night. They'd been looking for him for several days already. Oh. And could I please see what I could come up with? So I remote viewed it to start with. So now you're going to get to understand the difference between remote viewing and out-of-body travel. All right, so this is a description I give to the family for rescue services to go to. The area is remote, high alpine, no trees here. Pine and aspens are below, but not here. No large animals, only rodents like pikas and marmots are here. Mostly rocky, unstable, the land moves, the rocks move with the seasons. The rocks are very sharp-edged, fresh broke. Scree slopes, loose gravel rock is everywhere. The vegetation's low, vining, a lot of it's rust-colored, it's very hardy, a lot of lichen on the rocks and mosses. He's in a horseshoe-shaped bowl, which is surrounded by very high peaks. There's peaks in the distance of the open mouth of the bowl. There's a small body below him and to the side. He's leaning against a huge rock. It towers over him. It feels like he's a little bit underneath the rock. He's got dark clothes with a red emblem or a stripe on the jacket. There's a day pack with him, and walking poles or ski poles, something like that, are on his side. And I also pick up that he's hypothermic. I get off the phone with the family. They move that information. We're going to move it in the morning to emergency services. And I go back out of body to check on his health. There's very low oxygen where he's at. It's biting cold. There is a storm moving in. There's a leg out in front of him. One of them is wounded, possibly broken or torn ligaments or tendons. This is the reason it looks like he took a fall off the peak. He's not very far from the summit, 200 to 300 feet. He either fell or the ground gave way. He's cold, almost numb now, hypothermia. He's emotionally calm and hasn't given up. He's not afraid to die, but he is hypothermic. He's losing body heat and he's not able to regain it during the day, and he may not make it through this night. I tried to gather energy to heat and heal him. I tried really hard to do this. And so for some reason, when you're in energetic form, you only have what's available, what you fueled up. I couldn't gather more energy. So I couldn't help him. Anyway, I guess that was part of the remote viewing. So we hang up the phone, I drop back in, I contact some special friends to meet me there who will be able to heal and heat him back up. I return to Vaughn to be the marker for my special friends so they can find his body now that I know where it is. And he had fallen over and there was no life force energy coming from him. So I called off his friends. At that time, it was about 1 a.m., 3 a.m. on the East Coast, and so I didn't call the family to tell them he'd passed. However, they were able to use my information.
Thanks,
the
Biggs.
next morning. I found
So we found the ship.
photos and they sent them to me because I had asked him if you would please let me know where he's found. So here's where the bowl opens up. You can see other peaks in the distance. Here's the lake I saw. Helicopter that took him out, it does show you that low rust covered, ground cover stuff I saw. You can see all the sharp rocks. This is Vaughn. Oh, okay. All right, we're gonna watch a little bit of this. This is just a little bit of joyriding here in the universe.
Welcome to Beyond the Wormhole, where we go out of the matrix and into the great beyond. I'm Debbie Pokornik, and I'm here with my good friend, Angelia LaRue. Hi, Angie. So, Angie, what would you like to talk about this week?
So this actually happened with a few people. So we decided we wanted to go explore another world, another civilization that was similar-ish to ours. We didn't want it to be so different that we couldn't relate to it. Put a wormhole and we went into the upper stratosphere. This is outside of the range where the satellites are. You can look back and see Earth, not as far out as the moon. And we just looked around for a sixth-dimensional ship, which is a great place to travel because everybody is very, in their own evolution, they're very love and compassion filled. And so you're either ignored when you land in their towns or met with curiosity and compassion. So
Okay, nice.
And we boarded the ship. And that ship only had two beings on it. One of them was some type of AI, but it had biological components to it. It wouldn't interact with us though. And the other one was a sentient being from another race, which is a biped, like we are, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 forward-facing eyes.
Oh, okay.
And it was the first time I ever saw a holograph. Now, I've been on other planets, I knew there was a holograph there, but I wasn't able to see it in an out-of-body form. And this is the first time that I finally am able to see one. And it was a very exciting moment for me. And the holograph that was up was of our planet. And he basically told us he was a scientist, he was studying our planet, and he was studying ice flows, mining, deforestation, just kind of all the big planetary things that we're doing that show up that are changing the face of the planet. And that's, what was our impact on the planet. And he was just collecting data. He clearly told us he was non-interference. And in the front of the ship, there was this small platform on the deck. And I was very fascinated by it, and I kept finding myself over by it, and he told me it was a wormhole. And he takes that wormhole every day to kind of come to work, and his job is collecting data from our planet. And he invited us to go through his wormhole to his planet. He said, I'm looking at your planet, would you like to look at mine?
Now, isn't this like getting into a stranger's car? We use our cars to go back and forth to work and get into a stranger's. Okay. Anyway.
He was a nice guy. You know, in this form of out of body, you can see how much heart energy is coming out. You can see the colors in the field, or if there's dark sparks in the field. Like, you can, truth and telepathy at this level is how the universe works, and there's nothing hidden. So if there's any dark agenda whatsoever, we can see it. Right. And we would have accepted his ride through the wormhole.
Of course, but it still sounds interesting.
Yeah, he was a very gentle, gracious being, and it was very exciting to be invited to his planet. So we went, and the first thing that, as we came in, we saw like an archipelago of worlds. So this is a world of large chains of islands. And most of the world is very watery. So we sat down on a chain, one chain of island, and we're like in a subtropical jungle, right? And the plants that have leaves the sizes of entire rooms. And it's very confusing. And we're just like, oh, I can't see anything. I feel like a little mouse on the jungle floor.
Yes.
And so we rose up, and when we rose up above all the foliage, in the distance, we saw a dome, an energy dome. And there was a central post coming up the center, which was spraying out the energy. And underneath the dome was a city. And we're like, oh, that's where we should go. So we floated to the city, and we floated into the city. And, you know, first we wanted to go look at this pole, and it looked like this, like, Nikola Tesla pole, and it sent out this big dome of energy, right? And we asked, because at that point we still had telepathic communication with the gentleman, the scientist on the ship, back on our planet, and telepathy works like that, right?
Okay.
And he said that it was protecting their world from them, so it was keeping the emissions of their society endomed and not going out. And it also kept out some of the wildlife that would come into the city to keep it safe. Now, we did find some wildlife in the city. There was this, some dog-like creatures that had antlers. Yeah.
Okay.
There was some squirrel-like creatures, but they had foliage on their back instead of fur. And the one I particularly remember the most was, and I never got to see it, but there was there was a lagoon that came into the city, and the city was kind of built around the lagoon. And in this lagoon was some giant underwater creature. It could feel me and I could feel it, and it kept sending out bubbles at me. So I never got to see it, but it was there.
You couldn't see it, but you could sense that it was there? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I could sense it was there, and then when I would ask it to come closer to the surface so I could see it, it would just blow bubbles up.
Aww,
Yeah.
that's kind of cute.
So we go into the central area where that big post is that's sending out the energy dome. And on the way there, I noticed these like energy tubes weaving through the city about a story and a half up, and they're just big tubes. And they're energy. And the first thing that happens is I get sucked into them.
I may have stopped it there. Anyway, I get sucked into one. So it's adventurous. It's really adventurous and fun. Oh, your battery's running low. That's what happened. Right. That's right, I'm almost done. Well, maybe we better plug it in. All right. So curiosity, not fear, right? Just be curious, be open. All right. I don't know if you remember a while back, a whole bunch of heads and states, Hillary's running mate and Buzz Aldrin and either the Pope or one of the Pope's archbishops, they all ran to Antarctica. I don't know if anybody remembers that or not. It was kind of weird. Everybody suddenly wanted their photos taken with pigeons or penguins. Well, I knew we'd never get the truth, so I decided to jump out of body. And I found something underground.
Bring up the,
All right, so it starts off with just a big ice cavern, and at the back of the ice cavern is kind of an angled, it looks kind of combination between natural and man-made, like maybe a passage was forced. Goes down at an angle about 1 or 2 miles, and then that previous slide we saw, so it comes down to this. There's a control room right here, a bunch of cabinets and stuff right here. This is all computers in here. We'll go back to that other slide. Skip.
low tech.
I love low tech. And then this drops straight down. Now, I don't know how they navigated that or anything, but that's really not my concern. This drops down, I don't know, it seemed like maybe 4 or 5 miles. It was just incredible. To a spaceship that's floating. That's why everybody went down to Antarctica. All right, this is trip to the dark side of the moon. We call this Waterworks Moon. The whole trip was spent just all in the aqueduct system, which is apparently shared by all the different stations, research stations on the moon. They use one central system, which was interesting. There's another reporter's, their view of what we were looking at. And again, you can kind of see where we're in different places. We just actually hung out in this big water tank for a while, and it was really amusing. This is something really interesting we found. It's kind of like IMAX theaters. One theater is over here. Where's my stick? Other theaters over here. And this is a control room, kind of in between them. Inside of each one is, benches or whatever to this wrap-around screen. What was so interesting was, and they were played like screensavers, like you just take a break, go have your lunch, go hang out in the theater. One theater was playing all trail cams from Earth. So they tapped into our trail cam system. So you can sit there and you can see the wind blowing and a deer wandering by and all that. And the other theater was set up on our street cams. So we're watching people walking up and down streets and stuff. I can't tell you how weird that is to be on the dark side of the moon and see that in a theater. All right, different trip to the dark side of the moon. We found this big antenna, so these are different reporters showing their version of it. We ended up having a really epic adventure with this antenna, which I won't go into too much. Here's another person showing it, showing the energy emanating off of it. We eventually did figure it out. It was shared by all the different labs, and there's similar ones on different planets going out in different directions, and this is how they jump the information back to their homeworlds. And all the species who have research stations on the moon, just like Antarctica, are using this massive, massive antenna. I didn't put it in here. We do have a weird photograph, actually, of this. All right, this is so this lady was really good at jumping, but she's really not so good at reporting. She managed to put the entire lunar report in a single page. And this is the antenna. This is something unnatural that we found. This had been cut into a mountain, and there was a big, huge energy source in it. We were running out of time now and being pulled back to our bodies and didn't get to explore what that was. This is a central energy system that was feeding that antenna. We actually found this under the moon and then took it to the surface, which is how we found the antenna. Here's another version of it. Just all this radiating energy that comes out, and we followed this up and we found that big three-legged antenna on the surface of the moon. Different story. This is the restaurant at the end of the universe. I'm kidding. This is Rebel World, story that we just had been listening to. And we asked to go to a desirable social place that people went to, and we ended up at this spinning squash restaurant. And we phased through it to get inside. I was very excited to see like what they eat and what they do and what kind of music they listen to. And instead, I got motion sickness. The guy who jumped with me also got motion sickness. Took a little bit longer for it to set in, which begs a really interesting question about out-of-body travel. I left my visual cortex back in my body. I'm traveling out-of-body in the etheric field. So is he. How do we get motion sickness? How's that work? So a lot we don't know about this stuff. This is a whole series we did where we went to, this is a group actually from SSE, they used to be members. And the question was, what were we in our lives before we began to incarnate on Earth? I kind of didn't think there was any of that. It turns out every single one of us had incarnations before we came to Earth. I was a big red bird. This is my world. It was kind of a fairy world, and two different versions of this. I saw it as a cenote underground. A couple other people did, but somebody else saw it as a cave that we slept in, roosted, I guess, at night. Here's somebody else's version. It was a very fairy world. There was lots of little beings everywhere down in the grass, lots of little glowy orbs. Here's the cave, sense of a vast cave, vast space inside the cave. Another jumper, she was on a twilight world. She was a lizard. She was the most advanced being on it. It was very far away from the sun. Occasionally spaceships came and mined things. It was a big world with a lot of stones and a lot of crystals and stuff. And this is actually her house. There's another sketch I didn't include in here that we have her in it. But it's like a piece of mica or selenite or something leaned against a different type of rock. And she lived in the space underneath. All right, another jumper's life. This was a water world. The entire thing was water. This is underneath water looking up at the sun, so we do have a sun. And all the different areas in the ocean are showing up as domed communities. We know they're not domed, but it's collective energy, collective consciousness, right, that creates a community. We'll see some other reporters on this. Here's another person reporting it. If you notice, water, surface, no land. Same thing, they have the whole sense of this community. They talk about the underbed sea holes. We'll see another one. All the fish and stuff were gathering extra food and stuffing it into corals, which stored it underneath the seabed for hard times. All right, here we go. So here's some of the corals where they deposited extra food. This particular community, this is a good example of the fish that we see. Lots of jellyfish, nudibranch type things. And they kind of defended their area in a number of different ways, which we didn't quite figure out how that was. All right, our guy, his last incarnation before starting incarnating on Earth, he was kind of this like jellyfish bat. Here's another person's version of him. And again, the Dome City. We're all seeing the same kind of stuff, right? Here's another person's version. Oh, here he is. Inhabited honeycombs underneath here. Again, you'll notice all these jellyfish, octopus looking things, these pod life forms. Oh, all right, another person. These were humanoid like us, 2 arms, 2 legs, but they integrated with technology. So, you know, if your job was using your arms a lot and lifting things, you had your arms basically removed and, you know, these transformer kind of arms put on, or if it was your legs, or, you know, if you were, you know, a mathematician, you had the back part of your head removed and a big computer installed to give you higher computing power. So they transformed themselves and they lived under the surface. The surface of the planet was very volcanic and very full of sulfur and whatnot, very uninhabitable. They kind of lived in these honeycomb structures. One thing I remember about them is they had almost like no heart. There was almost like no emotions. And so instead, at certain places, at intersections and walkways and stuff, they had this like techno-electronic music going that was really hard and driving because it was the only thing that made them feel. They couldn't feel anymore. They had changed their species' trajectory so much by marrying technology, they couldn't feel anymore. All right, here's more drawings of that world. Again, you see these honeycombed things underneath the surface. Here you see all the sulfur coming up. Artificial energy field around him. He's part technology. Very strange to see out of body. Oh, they had floating cars they used in the tunnels. All right, more from that world. Almost no animals, but we found these artificial tick-like cockroach things. They were not living, they were man-made, and they ran around in the tunnels. All right, last one. This one was super hard to figure out. Super, super hard. It was this piece of space. There was a black hole in one direction and a big nebula in the other, and we were at this particular point in between those 2 points. And the space here was swirling and doing things, and it was making these toroidal fields and these little spinny things, and then it'd spin it and send it out, and there was these dimensional shift things, sheets. That was very strange. Here's another person's drawing of the same area. Oh, maybe it was a wormhole and not a black hole. These are the words here. Giant red nebula being, tunnel, worm-like, points of light, stars, swirling, no up, no down, ancient, wise seeker, bright points of light. Here's another person. This is kind of showing this library of wisdom between 2 poles, and they have this piece of space. This is a sentient piece of space between these 2 points. We finally figured it out. This guy's prior life, he was a piece of sentient space. Guess what he is this life? Astrophysicist. All right, here's another reporter's view of that section, and here's our piece of sentient space. Wow, sentient space. Space. All right. I hope I fired your imagination, fueled your ideas of what is possible, what you can do. We are so much more than we know. We come into these bodies and we get compressed, and these bodies come with a rule set. It's given to us by parents and schools and all that. But we are these eternal beings who have been all kinds of fantastical things. And when we crack our brain open, when we let go of our identity, our personality, and allow the fullness of what we are to become, we are wonder. You are wonder. All of you. And on that note, I thank you for bringing your curiosity here and being a part of it today. Thank you. Oh, and I'm expected to tell you I'll be speaking again in Washington, D.C., August 30th to September 3rd at the 2023 IONS Conference. Do we have any questions? Okay.
Questions, I think. On your experiments with Kavar, why, out of curiosity, why is like a 64 considered the same or close enough to be significant to a 67 or whatever? If the number wasn't actually the same, why was it considered significant?
Do you remember that slide where how similar the numbers look?
Mm-hmm.
It's connected with that. I'll see if I can. The numbers look very similar out of body, and you're just kind of guessing at what you're actually seeing there. But it does make for a certain significance.
Almost.
Well, yeah, so it's kind of looking like that, but there's a better representation because of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then also, if you were going from 3 to 9 to 6 hours, were you continually jumping, or was that, I'm trying to understand the concept of what you were saying, or was that a jump of 6 hours within a 40-minute period? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so it's like basically it's coming out to a 30 to a 40-minute jump, and I'm doing it about 2 times a week. Or
Within that, you were going the 6-hour span?
yes.
Another question.
So do you have a name for any of the places you visited?
Well, the one world we call Weeble World, but yeah, we're just coming up with our own names for it. It's interesting with telepathy, like the name will not come across. Like if you ask another being, what race are you? It comes back to you as, we are the people. We are loving people, or, it's not the title in their language, which you may not be able to, it could be all like high-pitched screes or something for all we know. So it's a feeling that comes to you. The telepathy is a feeling. It always kind of comes down to the same thing, we are the people of this world. It's the name of the planet.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the devices you have around the room?
Oh, okay. So I placed some orgon generators around the room, and what they do is they kind of raise the energy up. They're giving you guys some life force energy, helping your minds be very clear, helping you to be very settled in your hearts. When you leave here, you're going to notice you have quite a bit of energy, and that maybe you have a little bit more heightened alertness. The colors are a little brighter. They're just life force energy. Yeah. I do. Yeah, part of the awakening of consciousness with spirit led me into a lot of knowledge about what subtle energy was, how to use it, how to add frequencies, how to use frequencies to evolve, to heal our body, stabilize our minds, and evolve our consciousness. So kind of body, mind, and spirit. And there's all kinds of different frequencies that can help us in that area. And right now we're living in a time where we have a lot of bad energies, like all the EMFs and the Bluetooths and the cell phones and the this and the that, and they're depleting us. They're depleting our energy and slowing us down and making us mentally dull and all kinds of stuff. So it's a countermeasure. So, my job as a mystic is keeping the balance, helping keep the balance.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. It's an honor to hear about them. And if I might, with your permission, could I talk a little bit about your study and the design of your study and how, so Kavan was the principal investigator and you were basically the full-time subject, right? So one of the things, what you were doing is called associative remote viewing, in the sense that you put up a symbol later on in a specific place to view, which was the symbolic representation of an outcome. So the outcome here was the 6 numbers that were chosen for the lottery. You had 6 different numbers up. You set yourself a very, very hard task. One of the things that associative remote viewing usually does is predict binary events. So a binary event like the win or loss of the Denver Nuggets on a certain night. So what you did was you planned and you set up this place where you would locate and you would have your answer. So you could have a green X if the Nuggets won and a red 0 if the other team won, and have more chance.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I'm not sure if I really understand the patterns, how the 3 looks more like a 9. But the way that the lottery treats numbers is on a nominal scale, meaning each number is a name and not a line, a number on a pattern line. So a 1 is no closer to 2 than it is to 60 when they're all bubbling up in there. So you can think of the 1 as a picture, a sun, 2 as a skull, 3 as a something else. And you might have better luck predicting those things by making them more discriminative.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
it's inappropriate to use ratio level statistics like the Pearson product correlation on nominative level variables. So you would want to do you want to do 6 logistic regressions to actually, you have hits or misses. 27 is no closer to 28 than 2, right? So you could, I think that you would be able to show your abilities much better with a better design study.
Probably so. I know nothing about the science.
Yeah, no, that was worth of on.
Yeah. I just do the jumps. That's what I know how to do. And, we reduced it from 1 in 3 million to 1 in a million. And I do feel I could have honed it in a lot more, but I literally just used up
Well, I think
psychic reserves in 4 months of jumping. So,
Right.
yeah, a lot of adversity. Yes, ma'am? Thank you.
Hi. When you do out-of-body experiences or remote viewing, how do you ensure that your body is safe? Is it because of the raised frequencies? Because what about like entities or other energies that can come in and inhabit the body?
Great question. Great question. Okay, so we are masters of the universe, all right? Our thoughts and our intentions create reality. So when we fuel up, we set a field which has a rule set in it. And basically we're claiming sovereignty, right? And then we also have angels and guides and beings. Remember the big Hindu god dude that was in Kaban's room? That protect us as well. It's literally not a concern. But that's a really good question because our left brain is going to have that as a concern. But our right brain, which is accessing our higher states of knowledge, knows that. We have sovereignty, and we're kind of masters of the universe. So we set the field out there of what is allowed to happen and not allowed to happen. And what I try to do, and I'm not successful yet, is turn my bladder off so I don't have to come back to my body so soon.
That was very smart. I just have one more question. This one's kind of a weird one, but there's been multiple times where I've been in a wormhole, but I couldn't like stay in it. I kind of like veered off to the side. And is that just like a focus thing or?
Yeah, great question, really good. Really good question. Yeah, so at this point, you're just training your intention, right? And so when you're veering out of the wormhole, there's something in you that's saying, I can't do this. And so you get off path, right? So, this is like a martial art. It's like becoming a 4th degree black belt in something. It's just this fine-tuning, honing and staying in the wormhole, right? And it's, if you've been in the wormhole, it's 100% focus and saying that crazy thing, right? Because it's just all over. Yeah, good job for you. Good job.
Hi, Angie. Is this on?
Yep, right there on top.
Okay, here we go. Thank you for your talk. Really appreciate it. I just wanted to get your opinion or your just opinion on this. I went to a conference where Ricardo Gonzalez was speaking, and he put together an experiment, a time travel experiment with about 100 people. And these 100 people all did a meditation where using the hypercube, they figured out a archaeological point in the past to all go to. And so they did this together. And when they got to the point in the past, there was no sight, there was nothing there. And when they came back to the present time, history did not hold that archaeological place in our present time of history. And it was after they came back that it was suddenly discovered. And so there was like 100 people that were involved in this. So I just wanted you to comment. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah. So I just was curious about your
That happens. Yeah, I can tell you this whole story about a bathtub plug. Time is not what we think it is, and we can slip timelines. Yeah, we can merge with other selves and other timelines. Yeah, it's all not what we think it is, and
Whoopses happen. Yeah, they're part of the greater construct. Great question.
So by just visiting collectively another place, they alter this reality?
No, it's not the visitation, it's not showing up that changes the timeline. Something else happened. Space is full of these rifts and wormholes, and it gets almost like a complicated ball of yarn. They went off track somehow and landed in a slightly different version of reality. Yeah, they came back into a slightly different version of reality than they had been in before. The jump.
Trying to think how to formulate this question. Most don't have the innate ability that you are describing, or at least it's not open yet. Or my question is, how does one who is curious about this begin to move in these directions, and how are you using your ability to get to a place? Are you using simply intention, or are you trying to focus on a certain frequency such that when you resonate with something, you then become it, or could come next to it, or see it? Why go to far distant spots if you could shift your consciousness or your frequency on any given spot, and then start to see a whole spectrum of consciousness, like even on Earth? Could you just sit right here and shift from one frequency to another, to another, to another, and become aware of all kinds of beings, or awareness modules of some sort?
So I like the wormholes.
And how do you get back? So would I use intention? I want to go home. You're stuck in a rift and can't get out, and you're looking for energy to try to get out. I don't want to be there. So would I use, visualize my body or my consciousness, or feel love for my, this avatar that I'm wearing here? How would I do that?
Okay, so awesome questions. All right, so getting back to your body is the absolute easiest thing. All you have to do is say, I want to go back to my, and before you can finish, you're back in your body. The hard part's staying up. It's not getting back. There's a draw back to your body all the time. And anybody who's tried to astral travel will tell you the stories about popping out of their body, freaking out, and popping back in their body, right? And they have to learn to overcome their fear to even be able to stay out on an astral travel. Same is true with etheric travel. You're going to be back to your body super quick. Now, the reason I like wormholes is I'm opening a protected space to travel in. I'm not saying that I can't shift my consciousness to something else, to be in some other place, but that's how we have whoopsies. Wormholes seem to produce less whoopsies. It's protected, it's very intention driven, it's connecting this place to this place, where if we are just saying, boom, I want to be in this other place, well, we can do it. I've done it many times. I don't know, I can't really answer that problem. There's a lot of different ways. I like wormholes, so.
They're fun.
Was there some other part of that question I missed?
I don't feel like I have the answer I'm looking for yet, but I'm looking outside the, well, I'm going to talk more later.
Okay.
Thanks, Angie. This is a question about your orgone bed that you use for safe traveling, and it made me think of in Egypt, the empty sarcophagus that would be in the temple, in the pyramids. And I wondered if you feel like that they had they're empty now, if they had some kind of equipment like the orgone that you used at that time.
Yeah, I'd say that's really likely. I mean, that pyramids, I agree with Tesla, they're technology. They're not tombs or for kings. They were some kind of devices. The actual orgone generator crystal biobed was a download from the Lemurian period, where that's exactly what they did. They exactly stacked crystals and minerals in certain layers to project energy. So, I mean, this isn't not specifically my discovery. It's my discovery in this lifetime, but it was something I was part of building a long time ago. So
And that's another thing with the evolution of consciousness, is you're starting to pull from the fullness that you've been through all the lifetimes, and you can start having these breakthroughs really pretty quickly. It's amazing. Yeah. All right, have a question over here?
Hi, can you describe a little bit more about how you etheric travel for those who have not had a Kundalini experience and are able to do that? I've had astral travel, but it was not necessarily by choice, and I haven't been able to get back there, and this sounds more doable.
Yeah, repeatable, right?
Yes.
Astral travel, you just gotta wait, maybe it'll happen again. All right, so where you want to start is living right. Watching your brain, making sure you're not going into negative, repeating, looping thoughts. Stay in charge of your moods. Don't create dramas. Don't be a part of drama. If you start doing this work and you can get at it, a lot of your friends are going to change. It's going to change your life because you become a connoisseur of high frequencies. Eat well. Don't eat this GMO stuff. Don't eat poisons. You need every part of your body to vibrate really high, and if you've just taken in a bunch of heavy metals from food and shots and everything else, it's going to make this really hard. You got a big old anchor inside of you. Meditate. Meditate. Go to high frequency events, do high frequency things. Get serious about questioning who you are and what this is all about, right? When we hit a certain frequency, when we're meditating, the wormholes are just there, right? They're just there, right? We don't know what to do about them, we're just watching them. And then get curious, jump in it. And, set your intention. And if you don't know a planet or anything else, just tell that part of you that does the navigation, your higher self, your eternal self, take me someplace where I can learn something interesting or amusing or useful, right? Your intention could be that simple. Take me to something safe and surprising. And then I travel in groups, and what we do is we combine our energy into one, so we become one energy field, and I ask for a matching location to that energy field. And so it gets some fabulous landings. I mean, there's a lot of amazing people in this world. Right? You start combining your energies and you find a planet that represents that combined energy, you get to meet really neat people. You're welcome.
Barring any other questions, I've just remembered in hearing you, I remembered a meditation one time where two of us were sitting together and the other person seemed to start to see what looked like to them a drum head. And I said, well, I'm seeing something shimmering. And then all of a sudden I saw something jump into that thing. And so I leaped in, and then they followed. And we ended up somewhere else where we were both bobbing. That's what I remember. And I don't remember seeing much, but I remember the experience. But my question now is, if you're picking up that consciousness, does it start to get difficult to identify your consciousness or what you're assimilating versus what somebody else is seeing? How do you not know when you see, like it looked like you had reproduction of multiple visions of the tower by many people, how do you discern that you're not picking up your powerful image, they're picking up the same thing you're seeing, or are they seeing independently that spot? So how do you sort out what is real when you're in what seems to be a very non-real, experience?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. And I think that just comes from time and practice, and you get it because all of our experiences come through our own filters. So I don't know how many people we have here today, but maybe 50 people. That's going to be 50 different interpretations of the presentation I've given today, right? It all comes through our individual unique filter. But when you're
preloading too.
Yeah, well, we're not going to go into preloading, that's very complicated, but there's a lot of ways you can prevent stuff like that, and there's ways that you can, it comes down to mind control, controlling your mind, controlling your intention, and being very clear, right? So when you actually go to do this, there's a real seriousness about it. You know, so like, you know, imagine two martial artists getting ready to spar with each other, the way they face off, you know, and their intentions and that calm and that they become 100% focused, right? This is like that, right? You don't want a bunch of randomness. You don't want your mind interrupting and running away. You want data. You want clear, clean data, and you want a clear, clean experience. Fooling ourselves helps nothing. We don't want to, we run around in an illusion all the time anyway. We don't want to increase that illusion. Great question.
Thank you.
Oh, we have a question back here.
Can you go through a wormhole to a parallel reality?
Yeah, multiple parallel realities. You can. When we get out there, things are very, very complicated. So that's why we use our intention, like the steering wheel on our car, to arrive to where we want to. Now we can put our our foot on the pedal and not use that steering wheel, and we are gonna end up somewhere. And it can be chaotic, right? So that's where we use our mental intention, and we train our mental intention to get where we want to go and not something else, because, and then when you start looking at different planes of reality or dimensions or frequencies of reality, whew, yeah. So a lot of mind training to get where you want to go.
And also when you're saying having a higher frequency with like your food, do you actually eat meat or does that?
I do. Yeah, I'm one of the rarest blood types in the world. So if I don't eat meat, I go brain dead. If I eat meat, I can be smart.
And the things you've been talking about, you teach it at your mystery school, right?
Yeah, at the Inner Passage Mystery School. We have the greatest spiritual retreats ever.
We know you're doing that at things that went online, but if you...
Yeah, you just contact me online, or I've got some brochures back here. I would like to start a class with a whole bunch of people together, but I usually end up doing things one-on-one. So like if you've got a couple friends that want to come join, okay, yeah, that's the best way to do it. You go through it together, and you're going to learn every step along the way where you can do this confidently and safely. Like I've been all over the place, and I'm really comfortable about it, and anybody can fill out any kind of question they want. I've dealt with all kinds of stuff, and you just become comfortable with what you are as an eternal spirit. And in the aspects that I know, I can transfer that to you and teach you, and you will have that mastery. I can't do everything. There's a few things I can't do, but that's okay. I'm not perfect.
We are going to cut off questions. Angie, what a fantastic presentation. Let's thank Angie for an amazing time. And I'm going to turn this over to Trina. And I know there's some people here that also want to make announcements.
What do you guys think? Let's give her another round of applause. I think it's kind of the new frontier of really creating and really understanding how we create. So I think this is a timely topic because there's so much that's stepping into, so many studies stepping into this